Welcome to the BeFit podcast. I am Jo, a mum, a fitness coach and the founder of BeFit. This podcast is all about helping women move, eat and live in a way that builds strength, energy and confidence at every stage of life. Join me each month for real conversations, simple tips and inspiration to help you feel strong, calm and completely yourself again. Hi and thank you for coming to watch the podcast today. Today I've got Anita Wong who's coming in to talk about nutrition with us. She's a functional nutritionist expert and I invite her in today because I love her simple approach to nutrition, because I think everybody that knows me, it's about keeping habits simple, making them sustainable so we can keep them going long term. So I'm going to let Anita introduce herself to you now.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me on here, Jo. Yeah, Anita, I've just actually recently qualified as a functional nutritionist, and the journey has been a real eye-opener, but it's one that I think is so important. The more people that become nutritionists and that can share that information with other people, pretty much of a mission for me now.
That's brilliant. I mean, as a personal trainer, I'm nutritionally trained, but I'm not a nutritionalist. And I think this is where people get confused, is I am trained in nutrition. I have a real interest in myself. So I've learned a lot more than I learned in my basic training. But what I love about having specialists is you specialise in that field. I've got a broad overview of lots of areas of health and wellness, whereas you're specialising in that. And I think, I love your passion for wanting to share that with other people. So I think coming into January, I'm feeling like people are really confused about what they should be doing. You should be cutting out carbs, you should be drinking lemon juice in the morning, and there's so much information and overwhelm. I feel that the people that I work with get stuck, and your simple approach is great. So I've been watching your videos and how you work with food. So what would kind of your day look like as an active person? So I know that we have crossed paths in the BMX field. Just pointing out that Anita is a much better BMXer than me. I've played with BMXing. I'm really not very good, but I enjoy getting on the track and getting on a bike, whether it be a BMX or a mountain bike. But that's where we've crossed paths. I think as active females, it makes you much more focused, doesn't it, on what you're putting in your body? Because I need to eat for energy. I am a fitness coach. I take 3, 4, 5 sessions a day where I'm really active, and I know you do a lot of training. So what would your typical day look like with nutrition?
Yeah, so we did meet on the BMX field for sure, and it's the sort of winter season at the moment for me, so it's really is real focus on training. So my typical day, I actually woke up this morning and had an overnight oats. So I do prepare that. And one of the sort of main focuses for me as a 53-year-old is getting enough protein, because protein is the building blocks of everything. And I think what happens with nutrition is, like you say, people hear these fads about, oh, I need to go keto, I need to go low carb, I need to be low fat, I need to only eat within a certain time window, I can't eat this and I can't eat that. And I think what happens is that you then get really overwhelmed and you fall back into your old habits. So breakfast is overnight oats. I tend to try and drink around 2 litres of water a day. Lunch will be something like poached eggs, avocado, maybe some oily fish like mackerel or sardines, and some seeded sort of sourdough bread and toast. And then dinner generally is something oven baked generally. So like chicken breast, chicken thighs, I'll do curry, I'll do sort of spaghetti bolognese, something quite easy, to be honest, because I'm not only feeding myself, there's 5 of us that live at home, so I'm feeding everybody. So it generally sort of ticks all the boxes. But what I will do is that I will choose, if I'm choosing meats, I'll choose the leaner cuts, because then you're sort of removing that excess saturated fats that we don't really want to focus on. We want to focus on foods that are low in they are unsaturated basically. But the whole focus is fueling my body, whether I'm at the gym or on a rest day, because rest days are just as important as the active days. But I would say that is a typical day. And then snacks would be fruit. So I'll have Greek yogurt with berries and seeds and nuts on, or I'll have a banana. So what I found actually since training is that I'm more conscious about thinking about how the foods will affect my body in a fueling and regeneration and longevity way. And I think that's something why I'm quite passionate about educating people around nutrition, is because there is so much noise and we just don't know where to go and where to look with it. And a lot of it is actually around habit forming and lifestyle choices. And I think if you can just add in a little thing every day, it then starts to take over and become the norm. And I think that's what everyone, if you're listening, that's what you really need to sort of focus on.
Yeah, I 100% agree. We have these autopilots set in our brain that are our habits that we've built up through our belief systems, how we've
Mhm.
been brought up, our experiences of what's happened to us in the past. And it's 100%, people say, oh, it's calories in, calories out. Wouldn't it be amazing if it was that simple? We've got these autopilots, and what we need to do is make small changes for it to be sustainable. We get to New Year, don't we? And everybody goes, right, what's your New Year's goal? I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to lose 2 stone. I'm going to go to the gym 4 times a week. And I'm going to make sure I'm drinking my water, and I'm going to meditate every day. It's not sustainable. And what happens is you fail. We
Yeah,
fail.
you
We don't
fail.
hit that goal, and we stop. I
And a
see
lot
this
of
time
that
and time
failure
again.
is actually through fatigue, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah,
And
I think,
it's
yeah, you're right.
mental
Failure is the wrong
fatigue.
word, but in our minds, that's how we feel. That I know my clients say, well, I failed.
Oh, yeah,
And that's what I
definitely.
say to them. You
Failure is what
haven't
everyone
failed.
thinks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
what our brain thinks. It goes into protection mode. I feel uncomfortable with this. I haven't done it. I'm going to go back to my autopilot. And I think, yeah, absolutely what you're saying. It's fatigue. It's mentally, we're fatigued with trying to do too much in
Well,
what is
it's
already
peer pressure,
busy.
isn't it, as well? I think that's something that I've really noticed since. So what I've been doing with my nutrition journey is I've actually been documenting that journey, mainly on TikTok. I've just started to share it on Instagram. That was a little bit my own sort of, because I was blending it with my digital marketing programs that I've got there. But I think it was the understanding of sharing my journey and what I was learning about nutrition. People were talking back to me, especially on TikTok, going, oh, I didn't think it was that easy to do. I thought we had to do this, and I didn't think I could eat full fat because I was told it was that, or, and I'm like, no, the thing is, I think what happens is that, like you say, there's a lot of confusion over what you could be eating versus what people are pushing at you on social. And
Yeah.
I think then that's where the overwhelm comes in and things go out of the window. And then you do feel like a failure.
Yeah.
Your mind is geared towards telling you that you failed rather than telling you actually it's just because I don't have enough information.
Yeah.
And of course, unfortunately, there are influencers online that do have that following, that then whatever they say is gospel, but it
Yeah.
might not actually be research backed. And I think that's where my functional nutrition, what we do as a functional nutritionist, is we look at your whole body and actually what's happened from even before birth all the way through to where you are now, that could have had an impact on what your symptoms and situation is now. And then when we do help you to look at your nutrition and your lifestyle and your sleep and things like that, it's all research backed. We go away and research what's the most suitable for you as well, because some research might not be suitable. And that's what led me into my whole nutrition journey. Because of my BMX and
Yeah.
because I hit the menopause, my performance dropped.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's going on? I'm training, I'm eating, I'm doing everything I'm being told to do. But my female body wasn't liking it.
Yeah. And lots of the advice that is out there is researched on men.
Yeah.
Lots of research around exercise, lots of research around nutrition is based on the male body, and
Yeah.
we aren't the same.
No.
We're different physiologically and biologically, which I can never get those words out. Is we're different, and we have very different life phases.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
lots of the women that will be listening to this will be perimenopause, coming up to that
Yeah.
stage and starting to feel those changes in their body for sure. It doesn't mean, you know, even as younger females, I've always struggled with my hormones. I've had heavy periods, really bad period pains, awful PMT. So I'm well equipped to come into this phase because I've battled with that all of my life. And we do need to look at our nutrition differently, and different
Yeah.
body types as well are incredibly different. I've got a friend who's incredibly tall and slim, wants to build muscle, and I've got somebody on the other end of the scale that really struggles to lose weight, and their nutritional intake is going to be incredibly different.
Yeah.
And you know, when you get this one size fits all, this is the only approach, it might not be your approach. And I
No,
think,
and I think that's it. And I think that's where, if you are listening to this and you're hearing a voice from one side of social, because it is mainly social media where people get their influence from,
yeah,
because we don't have that many magazines anymore. There are blogs online, of course, but most of the time it's social. What have I heard on social media? You know, so if you're getting that influence, then what happens is that that might not be geared to your age, your gender, and your life situation. You know, you may have underlying things that are going on that that person and that case study that they're using doesn't have, and it all impacts on various different things. So yeah, for sure. I mean, that's one of the things that I've really learned the most about nutrition, is that it's very, very, very individualized, and what one person is doing, it won't necessarily work for you as another person.
yeah. I think people always come to me and they're like, what diet do I need and what calories do I need to take? And I'm like, first of all, what are you doing right now? Normally starts with some sort of food diary to assess where they
Yeah,
are.
exactly.
And that's always my starting point. I do basic nutritional advice, and I will always refer if somebody needs, if I feel they need further advice. But it's always, where are you now? Is always
Yeah.
my question, because people want this one kind of golden nugget of information that's going to, you know, get the body that they want. And actually it's not one thing, it's a full circle approach
Yeah.
to all of those areas, like your sleep, your exercise, your stress levels. We know that has a massive impact on how
Yeah.
we metabolize the food that we eat, and the food that we need to be taking for our body.
Yeah, and also fueling, like when I say fueling, I don't only mean when you're exercising, just generally when you're not even
Yeah,
exercising. So if you're a person who's just starting out on your change of lifestyle journey and you're walking, fueling that walk, if you're, you know, going at a pace, doing that sort of activity, if you're not having enough foods that will actually help support that, it works against you. So it's really just fueling your body with adequate macronutrients, and actually not looking at the calories so much sometimes, because whenever I do videos on my social media, my TikTok is Nutrition Uncovered, whenever I do it over there, well, how many calories are in that? And I'm like, it's not always about the calories, it's about the nutrients that's in the food, because something can be 200 calories and be completely rubbish for you. And then you can have something that's 200 calories that can be full with healthy fats, protein, you know, all the nutrients and the carbs and the minerals and vitamins that you need. But it might be a little bit smaller than this one, or the other way around. Usually it's much
yeah,
bigger, and they're like, oh, I can't have that much because that's just going to like tip me over my calories.
yeah.
And actually, sometimes the nutrients that's inside the food is more important than the calorie count. Of course, you do, you know, it does come down to that deficit a little bit to lose weight, but if you're fueling your body with the right foods, you don't necessarily need to have to count the calories.
Yeah, and I think you've used the key word there, macronutrients. And I think this is a really big buzzword at the moment in the industry, in the fitness industry. And you should be hitting your macronutrient goal. And I also feel like we're getting really caught up in this.
Yeah.
When we talk about macronutrients, it's what we need in large amounts in our diet to sustain our health and well-being. And we don't necessarily need to be obsessively weighing But I do think having an idea of what it is, I always get people to use MyFitnessPal just to kind of log so they get an idea of what macronutrients have what calories are in what. Because if you have no idea, it's quite tricky, isn't it, to
Yeah, it
work on
is.
that balance.
It
And I
is.
always use it as an education tool rather than
Yeah.
a measuring tool.
It's a guide because you do need to understand portion sizes
Yeah,
because you could be doing everything right, but if you are eating too much of something, then you are going to have to store it if you're not burning it.
yeah,
And that's where that sort of like difficulty comes with weight loss and
yeah,
building muscle and things like that. So using it as a guide at the beginning, I think is the definite because
yeah,
everybody is different and even like when they say, oh, a fistful of protein, but then everyone's hands are different, and it's quite nice to see the plate and make
yeah,
sure that you know if you fill that plate up, what should I be filling it up with?
yeah. I think we've got super, I talk about this quite a lot with my clients as well. We've got supersized plates these days.
Mm.
So when we talk about a plate portion, or when the NHS talk about a plate portion, it's not the size plates that probably 60, 70% of us have at home. These plates have gone to these kind of bistro style plates.
Yeah.
And I always say to my clients, let's shrink your plate down, let's visualize it a little bit smaller. Sometimes I encourage them to go and buy one that's smaller and to use that as their guide because it's really easy to overfill some of these larger plates.
Yeah.
There's kind of everything's guided, isn't there? You've got big packets of everything. You've got big plates. You go out to eat and the portions are huge. And so I think our vision of what is a normal plate has become bigger. And so we always encourage people, first of all, look at the quality of what they're eating, how much is processed, try to come back to whole nutritional food and then their portions of their size. So if you're eating healthily, which a lot of people already are, because I feel we are very well
Yeah, we are
educated.
very health conscious, aren't we, in our
And sometimes
society?
it's just simply shrinking it down. What have you put on your plate? Take a little bit off of each area and see how that works. Because if you do that over 3 meals, you can lose 300 to 400 calories a day easily while still eating what you want to eat.
And also it's what foods you can put to complement other foods as well and avoid some of the sauces.
Yeah,
Because, I mean, I don't have a lot of sauces, and one of the questions I get asked a lot on my TikTok account is, oh, what mayonnaise do you use? What sauces do you put on? And I tend to use foods that have got more sort of water-based to help with that sort of like dryness if people are finding that their foods are a little bit bland. And spices, because spices, if you've got a spice rack in your house and you put spices on your foods, lunch and dinner, you're adding all of those really important sort of like phytonutrients, which are like plant chemicals that are really good for your body as well, that we wouldn't normally get in everyday food. So spices are a real plus that is probably undervalued really. So
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
one to
yeah. They're so a real good. Well, they're a micronutrient, aren't they? And they're really
yeah,
good to add in on top of those foods. I love my like herbs and spices. I've got two big. I've got a
yeah.
drawer that I made my husband create when he did our kitchen. So I've got two like big pods of spices
Spices, yeah.
because it makes those foods tasty.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it's just simplifying things and not thinking that you have to, like you said when we were talking before, that you have to Jamie Oliver it or do some magic sort of like concoction for dinner, that you can actually achieve your goals with a simple whole food approach and
Yeah.
just focus on what you need for your body.
Yeah, 100%. My dog's barking in the
I know
background now.
mine's
Can you
listening as
hear
well.
him?
And mine is
So,
sitting here listening, going, woof, woof, woof.
I think something's coming to my door. Hopefully, it's not interrupted with the sound too much. So, what I'm going to ask you to finish today, I hope that we can do this again, Anita, because I think it's really valuable.
Yeah.
But my question to you is what would be your top tips, like simple top tips today that people can take away and implement into their diet?
Okay, so I would say to have breakfast for sure, because there's a lot of stuff around about eating later in the day, and that will work for some people. But if you try that and it's not working, then breakfast is the main meal of the day. And it took me a lot to get around that as well. So definitely have breakfast, have lunch, and have dinner. And I would say look at your times of your eating. So I tend to sort of like eat during the daytime and try to avoid eating too late at night. So I usually have my last meal and snacks and things like that by 8 o'clock. I think that's a really good tip because what happens when you sleep is that you need to allow your body to do that repair and regeneration. And if it's working hard at digesting food, it's not doing the repair and the regeneration. So just have a little think. I think that would be my top tip is have breakfast when you're, half an hour to an hour after you get up and close off the kitchen around 8 o'clock in the evening. And whatever you do in the rest of the day, focus on a whole foods first approach. So try not to go for the ultra processed and the too much processed foods out there.
Yeah, I think that's really great, simple advice because also when we're menopausal, we know trying to keep eating at least every 4 hours is key. And I think, like you say, if you bring this window down by not eating late at night, it's easy to do that and keep your body fueled for good hormone regulation and just keeping your body balanced with regards to not craving foods. If we know we're going to eat, it's easier to hold off. And I think having a plan and knowing when you're going to eat is important. And I
Yeah.
definitely know that my clients that are successful are those that I teach to plan. We do a lot around planning your food. And I don't mean obsessively planning, but having a good idea of what you're going to have for breakfast, what you're going to have for lunch, and having those simple go-tos that when you're busy and you're short on time, that you've got the food there to grab to make it easy.
Yeah, and you can meal prep as well. You can meal prep some things so that you know that you've got things in the fridge or the freezer that you can grab and defrost easily, that you know is healthy and you've, created it so that you know that it fits in with what you want. And
Yeah.
I think the whole when to eat, when to work out, when what to eat beforehand is a whole other podcast because as menopausal women and me myself included, training fasted is a no-no because
Yeah.
of the spike in cortisol and just the education and awareness around how our bodies change as we age. It's not something to be afraid of, it's something to embrace. And if you
Yeah.
embrace that change, wow, you can have an amazing, it can be
Yeah.
really, really fruitful for you. So I think that's a whole other
Yeah.
discussion to
We
go
could
into.
literally talk for hours, couldn't we? But
Yeah, we
I love
could.
what
I've
you
got my
said
two
around.
favorite books right next to me that I'm going to be doing some videos on later. And it's just like that whole, because men also go through this. They have this whole hormonal change. And I
Yeah.
think it's not obviously as publicized as much, but they do have a drop in their testosterone, which then
Yeah.
does affect their mental health and their physical well-being. And women also have that drop in hormones and that fluctuation. And I think there's not enough said about that era of our lives.
Yeah.
And I think as younger men and women, what you eat in your younger ages can really help you prepare for going through that period of time later. So I think that's something that I hope people would take away from this is that
Yeah.
if you just focus on eating to live longer and think about it. And of course, you're allowed to have treats and days off, and you're allowed to go out and have a real blast with your mates and stuff like that. And but don't feel guilty about it the next day.
Yeah.
Just get back onto where you were.
Yeah.
And those little extras, they won't matter then.
Yeah. I think, like you say, if your base foundation of what you
Yeah,
eat is good, it allows you
to
that
have those
freedom
things.
elsewhere
Yeah.
100% because, you know, a rigid, you know,
Restrictive, it's
restricted
not,
diet is
it's
not
not living.
sustainable.
No, and it's not living, is it?
And you make yourself feel guilty. You make
Yeah.
yourself feel like you failed, you've
Yeah, and
not
you don't want
achieved.
that.
And we don't want that. We want
No.
to live our life. I was talking to somebody the other day, and my goal in life is to be happy and to make those people around me happy. And fundamentally, that's what we live for, isn't it? Is we want to enjoy our life. And if we can focus on eating better, moving more, and we can have a better quality of life as we age, that's got to be what we're looking at, hasn't it?
Yeah,
Is
100%.
staying healthy and active for as long as we can because we live much longer now than we ever have.
Yeah,
And I
and you have,
want to be
yeah,
in my 80s, 90s, strong, confident, and moving well still.
yeah, exactly. And I think and it starts because if you constantly fight what's happening to your body through nutrition and health and lifestyle, and you're constantly banging against the door because you don't understand what's happening, then you're always going to be stressed and eating up yourself inside, and you're not going to be happy. Whereas if you
Yeah.
can be happy and educate yourself and just learn a little bit more from people who are professional and know the stuff a little bit, then it sets you up for the rest of your life. And then everyone else around you and yourself will be much happier and live much longer and more
Yeah.
fruitfully.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you very much for today, Anita. I hope that we get to
Okay.
do this again because I feel like we could talk for hours.
Yeah, yeah, probably.
But thank you very much for joining today. I've really enjoyed the information that you've given us, and I hope that my ladies and the following that I've got and yours enjoy what we talked about today. So
Yeah,
thank you very
definitely. I'll be
much.
sharing it. Thanks
All
very
right,
much for
thank
having
you.
me.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.